who's on the line, the conversation.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, everyone. We have a lot of guests coming in within 1 minute itself. So that's a good sign for all of us. We're reaching 7980. Wow, that's huge within less than a minute. I think people have been really quite waiting after the face-to-face event. This is the first webinar which we are doing, folks, for PMI UAE chapter. Within the first week of, we have a last face-to-face event there. So welcome everyone on board. And then we will definitely have a good webinar today as well with our esteemed speaker, Mr. Mike, who is joining with us from USA. So we'll give a couple of more minutes for the people to join from different parts of the world. Please write from where you're joining, so that will also give us a good idea in the chat, so that we can see the diversity and the location as well from the people. Yeah, you see people coming from all over Asia or Canada. I saw UAE, of course, in Dubai, Sharjah, Abu Dhabi. Hello guys, hello folks, hello friends. Welcome to the PMI UAE chapter webinar evening. Philadelphia, USA. Okay, that's Mike there. Your message. Cheers. Ashraf joining from Qatar. Welcome, Ashraf. Great. So I think it's huge. What, 111? So Nelson figure already reached within 1 minute. So that's a good number so far. Hello, Sunil. Hello, Arvind.
Yeah, what's the time difference between India and Dubai? It's like 4 hours, is it? 4.5?
No, not really. It's kind of 1.5 hour actually.
Oh,
back.
really? It's that close. 1.5. I was thinking 3 or 4 for some reason.
No, UK is 4 hour back.
Yeah, UK is, yeah.
The back. India is 1.5 hour ahead from UAE. So good evening, everyone. Happy to see all you of the familiar names who have been joining regularly in our webinars, and the people who are joining new. Sometimes Philippines is 1 hour ahead in the UAE. Okay, it's somebody. Laurie is writing, so they are giving you all the time zones. Mike, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I've been to many of these places too. I've been to Qatar. I was.
She's writing 4 hours ahead. Yes, 4 hours ahead is Philippines.
Maybe that's what I was thinking.
That I was wondering that how come 1 hour.
I've not been to Abu Dhabi yet. That's still a city I want to get to, or area I want to get to. Been to Dubai,
of course. Capital of UAE, so definitely worth enough for us to mention and visit out there. Good. I think we are approaching very fast. 129 odds audience, 702. Welcome on board, guys and folks. So we are here again tonight for this PMI UAE chapter webinar series. And today's topic, what we're going to talk about and discuss is what is Agile and Agile mindset by our guest speaker, Mr. Mike Palladino. And of course, the people who know me already, again, let me introduce myself if in case you don't. My name is Anshul Chaubey and I'm the moderator for tonight or this particular webinar. I'm joined by my colleagues at the back end from the PMI UAE chapter events team, Irene, Pervez, and Amir Ali, who has been doing a lot of great stuff in terms of managing the Zoom webinars with us. So we are all together to manage this up together. And then more importantly, let me explain our housekeeping notes so that we can expect from a webinar is somewhere around an hour or so. Before we launch our today's webinar topic, we would follow the set agenda tonight. As we do, we will go through a brief introduction of our chapter and the core webinar presentation, of course, with Mr. Mike. Then we will have a short time for our question and answers, where Mike and I will do our best to accommodate all sort of answers, which we can try to post to your questions in the time frame. We encourage all of you as a lovely audience to post your thoughts on the chat during the webinar as well, and interact with us to make the webinar as much conversational and engaging possible. With regard to questions, try to keep them to the Q&A section of the chat, so that will be easier for us to collate it at the time of during the end of the webinar. So before, I also give a heads up to a speaker once I will open my camera back. So you can also then expect that the time can be managed, and that will help us to manage the questions as well as the content. So I think we have reached 142 so far at 7:04. That's a good number over there. Let me share my screen quickly now to introduce our chapter and its content over there. Give me a second. Yep, here you go. Let me make it full screen. It should be quite visible. Good. So again, welcome to the chapter webinar series. We are from the Project Management Institute. For the people who are joining it first time for that level, PMI is founded by 1969 with a group of project managers in US. And now with the 50 years later, it is a source of resource of all the project management core work. And it is one of the largest association in the world. Issued globally recognized standards and credentials around project management. A lot of training, accreditation, community work is also going on behind the scenes with PMI. We have sponsors and published research work, and also do a lot of knowledge content sharing as well. We have our chapter, and that is the vision, what you're seeing over there, to empower and influence individuals with the innovative project economy principles to turn ideas into reality. So this is our chapter vision now. And to achieve that vision, the mission statement states that to disrupt and create value-driven opportunities to our chapter members, which all of you are there. If in case you're not, please join us and our partners to become agile, innovative, productive in the platform for the growth of the project economy. About the chapter photographs, of course, people who have attended the last face-to-face session, you would have seen the energy levels around there. We are chapter run 100% by the volunteers. More than 3,500 active chapter members. In fact, it was different number now, so it's a much more than 3,000 plus. So ranked among the top 5 chapters in PMI EMA region. We focus on top leading industry and the trend settings there. We also serve as an aspiring community with PMI certified holders and also the professionals who are there always to offer their capabilities and offerings to our profession. We all depend on the volunteers like all of you who have been doing great stuff, and then your dedication is always being appreciated around chapter activities to make it as invigorating as possible with us. Our chapter board, we have the president, Mr. Adil Sultan, and being joined by rest of the board members, as you can see on the slide there. We have a lot of membership benefits in our chapter. So you can see their new enhanced benefits are these in terms of the 4 pillars of networking, knowledge sharing, learning, growth of the career opportunities and events, of course. So this particular webinar, which we are trying to do over here, is the part of the events pillar there in terms of diversified webinars. We have similar sponsors from Dubai Properties and Miras, and our collaboration partners as well are being listed over the slide. Some PDU information. So the people who are going to attend this webinar today will be eligible for 2 strategic PDUs, and it will take near about a week maximum time to get your PDUs into your account. Recently, there has been some backlog of the PDUs, which has mostly been sorted out. Please note that you can report any kind of unclaimed PDUs by mailing us on info@pmi.org. A lot of social media engagement keep on going with us in terms of YouTube and in terms of the LinkedIn and even in the Twitter. Please feel free to see our website for the upcoming webinars and also the events which we keep on organizing as per our schedules. So this is our webinar starting point now. And allow me to just close my slide here, and then I will introduce our speaker. Okay, so Mr. Michael, who is with us speaking about Agile and what is Agile mindset. He's a program management professional from broad experience across several industries. He is the director of enterprise agility at Bristol Myers Squibb Pharmaceuticals. Mike is an adjunct professor at Villanelle University teaching courses in Agile and project management, and he's also a PMI ATP trainer. He's a past president of PMI DVC and an author of Data Management University magazine. He's a professional speaker, having presented in many countries over 20 years in his experience. So here I am going to stop myself and I will give the stage over to Mr. Mike to take us through his journey. Over to you, Mr. Mike.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. So hello all, welcome. And when you unshare, and hopefully I'll be able to share here in a moment.
Sure.
There we go. It's starting to come up.
Yeah, just
Excellent.
share your screen.
Yep, it's popping up now.
Can see you. Can see yours. Yeah.
Yeah, so welcome and appreciate you joining tonight, and certainly from all different time zones. That was exciting to see. I've probably been to most of them. I've been to many different countries and cities, traveling around. Part of it is work, part of it is as part of speaking. So just I enjoy meeting people from many different places, and great conversation to have is around project management and Agile. So tonight, I'm going to talk a bit about Agile, the Agile mindset. What is it? We hear about it. We sort of hear about it. PMI has been making a much heavier move toward project management. And Agile is part of how it fits in with project management. But what I really want to talk about, to me, kind of what the core of Agile is really about, because I think it gets misunderstood. Because to me, at the very core of Agile, it's about people, it's about teams, it's about high-performing teams, helping make more rapid decisions, better accountability. It's moving from large-scale upfront planning, like we've been used to in a more traditional type of planning, and it moves it to a much more rapid, iterative approach. Now, I'm going to shock everyone when I say Agile really is not about software development, even though that's where it started. Agile's really not about project management, which again is maybe a bit of a surprise. There's many elements, there's many overlaps, there's certainly a lot of synergy and connections. But as I said, to me, it's much more about helping the people understand how they work together, how they interact together. And when we apply it to projects, then we see some incredible benefits and value. And that's some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight. And what I've seen, I've been working with Agile for 15, 20 years now. I was doing elements of Agile before there was even an Agile. I used to do something called project recovery effort. That's where projects have trouble and they'd ask me to come in and fix them. And I started using some of these techniques before there was even this concept called Agile. So it was fun to see it develop over time. Agile is, as you can see, it is for IT, it is for projects, but it's also can be applied to enterprise, to organizational groups, to leadership groups. It's more than just those particular areas. It's great for rapidly changing requirements. It helps teams deliver more with less cost, less time. And it talks about concepts of good enough and minimal viable product. So some of these I'll cover today. For those who may be still a little skeptical, here are some examples of successes I've been part of over the years. We've had teams that we were rolling out per country. It was taking us 11 months per country. We switched them to Agile, and now they were able to deliver every 3 months per country. Very dramatic acceleration. We had one of our scientific teams that normally they'd spend a year working on a project, scientific project. At the end of the year, realized perhaps they were on the wrong path, spend another year to try to fix it. This team, they said, no, we want to do something different. We brought them into Agile in the very beginning. And within 2 months, they realized they were making the wrong decisions. They needed to change. Because of Agile, they identified it much faster, made the rapid change. And when they did, they were able to deliver in 9 months. And the group even won an award outside of our company. It was so impactful in the scientific community. Our COVID response team, certainly how did that team was going to plan out responding to lack of requirements, changes of federal, state, local law, international law, all of these different changing requirements. We switched them to an Agile team in the beginning, and that's how they were able to deal with all of the rapidly changing requirements. Certainly not a project we could predict and plan and run in a normal predictive type of a waterfall type project. But to put it in context, certainly a lot of our training, a lot of our background may have started in more of that predictive or sometimes called waterfall approach. We have the requirements, we do design, implementation, we verify or test, and then we have to support it. And you probably have worked in some form of this type of a approach. So I just put this here for reference. But what I want to start is actually going back, where did Agile even come from? Where did it start and why is there a need for it? So I'm going to go back to where did some of the projects start? So certainly early construction projects, early as we're building these large structures, what becomes very important is the amount of planning that goes into these projects. If we construct something, it's going to be there permanent. Certainly think of the pyramids. They're rather permanent. They've been around for quite some time. So we can't decide at the end of the project, can we move the whole pyramids? Can we just shift them over by maybe 10 centimeters? We made a slight mistake. It's too late. So that early planning became important. So that was led to a lot of the techniques that we learned. As software was started, I remember the early days of programming was done with physical switches. So for each of these zeros and ones, you had to physically turn a switch on and off. Of course, it became easier with things like punch cards or different assembly programming. Not exactly the easiest way to do it. So planning was also very important. Where is memory stored? How are things going to be used? But over time, we kept making higher and higher level languages to become easier in software. Today, we have all of these different libraries and objects and layers and automated tools. It's much easier to make changes, to make adjustments, to swap out something. And a lot of software development is much faster than it used to be back when I started my career. We won't talk about how long ago that was. So let me just kind of briefly summarize what I'm talking here, and you'll start seeing it on one slide here. Construction projects, there's maybe a little bit of planning and many years, many decades of build and execute. So the planning was not too much. The planning was a small proportion of the entire project. And of course, the cost of making a change is very high. Software in its early days had a very similar profile. But today, as software keeps getting faster and faster, that build and execute is much smaller. Conversely, the planning takes a larger proportion of the overall project. And the cost of change is relatively small. One other parameter is the rate of change. The pyramids, the buildings, early software, there was not a lot of change. It was too expensive, too difficult. The rate of change was small. Today, certainly our rate of change is much higher. So we need to make rapid changes, rapid decisions, low cost, and the execution is not very long. So it started to affect the type of planning that is needed. And I think of some of the planning around things like software, things like marketing projects. There's a creative process that's involved. And I think sometimes we forget that. We think that some of the work that we do is very discrete, very obvious, very predictable, and it's not. Imagine if I ask you, I need you to create a painting or a drawing, but before you're allowed to start, you must tell me exactly every single dot and what color that dot is going to be. Well, by the time we figure out the colors, we've already created the drawing or the painting. Now that we've drawn it and figured out the colors, now we have to go and actually do the work. It doesn't make sense. It's easier to step back and say, well, can we just have a high-level concept? I want landscape. Draw me a building, draw me a portrait. create something, I'll give you the general guideline, but the specific details come later. And that's a different way of thinking to how we normally do work in projects. We think we can predict what will you do in 9 months, 2 weeks, 3 days at Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And then in 9 months, 2 weeks, 3 days, Tuesday at 10 o'clock, I'm going to come back and ask you if you did that work. We can't predict that far into the future. We joke to ourselves if we think we have that level of precision and accuracy. We do not. So Agile says we're going to recognize we have high-level concepts. The details will come later. And you could feel a little uncomfortable with this because it's a different way of thinking and working. But again, we have it in many other places like art, other creative processes. And part of the concept that we're trying to understand, and I'm going to talk about this throughout the presentation, is as things speed up, we can't afford to be perfect on everything we do. Certain things, like in our business, our drug products, our pharmaceuticals, yes, they must be precise, but not everything has to be to that same level of precision. So we have a lot of time here to get to perfect, but very little benefit, very little value here. Perhaps great is good enough. We can save a lot of time, but still there's a small level of error, or maybe it's not precise or perfect. In other cases, sometimes good enough is good enough. We can see the responses faster. We can roll things out quicker. We're still getting a high level of value, but we're not spending all the additional time trying to get to perfect. Excuse me. And I share this at work, and my senior leaders really like these cartoons because it helps drive this point across. Are we going to be the perfect shop that may never open, or are we going to be the good enough shop that's open today? And as a company, as an industry, we're seeing tremendous pressure that certain decisions, certain approaches, certain things we do, we can stop at good enough. It's okay. So we're going to talk more about some of these concepts as I go along. If you haven't seen this by now with Agile, the concept is we're just simply breaking work into smaller pieces, and we're focusing on what is the most important work being done. So you'll hear things. I'm not going to try to teach Agile in 20 minutes tonight, but the very quick approach is we have requirements in something called a story that goes into a backlog. We decide what we're going to work on and focus on in just those 2 weeks and produce a small incremental benefit. I've lost my cell phone here somewhere, but if you think about your mobile device, we see Agile all the time. Yep, I did lose my phone. Oh, here it is. So
by the way, Mike, sorry to interrupt. You have 45 minutes, not 20 minutes.
No, I know it's 45. It's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. So with our phones, it's important to understand when we see all these updates, we're seeing Agile in practice today. That's why we have so many small incremental updates. Years ago, we would receive these very large software improvements, and they were very disruptive. So we're seeing it. We're living in this Agile world, even though we may not recognize it all the time. So just a very quick comparison, but I'm going to talk about benefits in a moment. We go from these step-by-step approach to develop everything to a much more smaller, iterative, incremental approach to slowly building up our solution over time. Now, at face value, there may not seem to be much importance, but let me look at it a different way here. Our traditional projects, predictive projects, we may work on this, say, for 1 year, and then all of a sudden at the end, we deliver everything. We finally get the value at the end. There's lots of costs, lots of risk that occur until we get to the end, and our customer says yes. In Agile, we're going to start delivering the most important things first. As we go up the curve, the next items we build maybe are lesser and lesser and lesser important. Think of the graph I showed you earlier. At some point, we realize this is good enough. This is okay. I have what I need. Especially, has anyone ever had a project that was stopped or canceled halfway through or partway through? What happens if we stop these projects? On our left, because we built everything to be delivered together, we spend all of this time and all of this money and we receive nothing. We have to stop the project. But in an agile way of thinking, an agile way of working, we're delivering the most important things first. So we go up the value curve quickly. We're delivering even sooner because now we're doing incremental delivery. If we stop the project, all we're doing is we're not delivering items of smaller value. So look at the green. What a difference. What a dramatic difference of delivering in this incremental way. I'll show these graphs briefly. Our visibility goes up with Agile because we're constantly interacting with our customers. We're showing them what we're doing every 2 weeks or so. We build in the adaptability and change requests because we allow our customers to constantly change their mind based on what they're seeing previously. So the adaptability goes up instead of it just being at the beginning of a more traditional project. Our business value goes up much faster, as I showed previously, and we're reducing risk because we're getting direct feedback from our customers and clients. They're giving us feedback every 2 weeks. We're reducing the risk that we're going to miss what we're delivering. So that's one thing. I just wanted to set a little bit of the context. But Agile, as I mentioned, can be applied in non-IT, non-software examples. You may hear the term business agility. And really what it's saying is we can take these techniques, apply them in other ways. We still get risk mitigation. We still reduce the cost of change. We have better employee engagement. People come in the beginning and they tell me, no, I don't want to work this way. I'm not going to change. But once we get them to change, they love it. They start to realize this is a much easier way to work. No overtime, no evening, no weekends. And it's fun. They come back months later and say, please do not make me go back. This makes too much sense. I like this new way of working. So people like to stay at the company longer too. People are more happy. They're more enjoying what they're doing. But to help change this, we need to change the way we even think about projects. Again, this is from a PMI perspective, this is a little different. We're used to thinking about a project. I had leaders say, well, we want to be incremental. We're going to shrink our projects to 3 months. That way we can do them faster. I said, okay, let me explain what's happening. We typically take 3 months to ramp up and start a new project, 3 months to do the project, about 1 month to stop the project. The next project, it takes us another 3 months to get it started. We run it, 1 month to stop. And I said, instead of thinking about this from a project-centric view, how about we pivot and think about this as a product or a product team perspective? So let's keep the team together and simply change the work that the team is doing. If we do that, we start removing some of the stop and start. Because now the team stays together and they go immediately into the next piece of work. Now let's do a very simple calculation here. The top path, if I add all of this up, is 14 months. The bottom is 10 months. So I'm only spending about 71% of the original time, or if I flip it, I'm about 40% faster. Now think about that. That's a 40% productivity increase, no additional hours. We're not working any more hours. We're just changing the way we think about the work. Let's expand it to even say 4 modules here. If we did it with 4, going across the top is 28 months. Across the bottom, 16 months. 57% of the time, original time, or we flip it, it's about 75% faster. Again, 75% faster with doing almost nothing. That's what's so amazing about Agile. Where does the speed come from? It's these concepts. It's just changing the way that we think about these concepts. Now I'm going to add another layer. You may have heard the Tuckman model. Hopefully you studied for your PMP and you remember this on your test. We go from forming, storming, norming, performing, and some people add adjourning. This is the curve that we normally take when we start a new project. The team figures out how to work together. Things do not run smooth, but if we're lucky and we help grow this, we get to norming and performing. Now, what's interesting is, let's think about the previous slide. Every time we stop and restart the team, we must go through the Tuckman model. If we keep the team together, we stay at the performing phase, the high performing. So we get an even higher benefit than the numbers I showed before. The team stays in that high performing mode because the team stays together, the way they behave and work together stays together, and all we're doing is changing the work that they do. Very powerful. We start getting some very amazing savings with very simple changes. What's important to remember, though, is in order to do Agile, our transformation, it's an ongoing journey. It's not a one-time come in, train everybody, and we're done. We're going to start with certain groups and teams. We need to work with other groups like purchasing and finance and leadership. So other cross-functional teams also adopt this approach. So it's changing the culture, it's changing the people, it's changing our management. They need to change as well. Because if I step back and say, well, what about the behaviors for the managers? It's getting them to think differently. These are the benefits they want. Adapt quickly to the changes that we want, rapidly responding to our customers. We need to create this continuous learning environment. So we want to build this into just the way we function as a company, not even projects, just the nature of responding to our customers. So what I do is I respond and I share with our leaders, they need to change too. We can't just make the change by ourselves. And as I travel around the world, every site that I go to for our company, they tell me the same thing. We want to change, but our management must also allow us to change. We say you're empowered, but if the management keeps micromanaging and asking too many questions and gets in the way, it doesn't help. So they have to trust the team. They have to be good communicators. They have to make sure we have a clear vision and strategy. Because what I find is the micromanagers do not like Agile because they wonder, what happens to my job? My job is to tell everybody what to do. If I don't do that, I don't have a job. But I tell them, if you go to Agile, what happens is you free up time to work on higher value work. And I don't know about you, but I find very few micromanagers are promoted. There's many managers who work on higher value work. They're the ones who get promoted. So it can even help leaders in their career because it helps them free up from working on the busy work and focus on the more important strategic elements of the company. So I'm going to just, this last section here, I just want to talk a little bit about is how do we get this idea across? How do we teach people? How do we help them understand this new way of thinking? Because somewhere along the line, we used to learn from doing, from touching things, from experience. As we move into school, we move into university, we move away from all of this practical knowledge of how we work. I remember sitting here and reading and reading and reading. I just completed an executive MBA program. That's all we did. We read. Very little did we touch or learn by doing. But let me ask you the question. How did you learn to walk? Did you read the manual? Or did you practice and experiment? How did you learn to ride a bicycle or drive a car? Did you read a manual? Maybe a little bit, but the real skill comes from just practicing, just trying, just learning. I'm getting my pilot license, and I'm finding that is also true. I just need to get into the airplane and fly and learn. That's how we learn as humans. We learn very fast by trying things and moving forward. Because what's interesting is sometimes I have conversations, people will say, just give me the book. Why can't you give me a big folder with all of the answers in it of how to do Agile? And I tell them, I can't, it doesn't make sense. So finally I came up with an analogy. I said, think about all of us here on the phone today. We talk about, we all went to university, or most of us went to university. We have a shared experience. We know what that means. It's different from other things in our life. But yet, if I break it down, we've been to a large school, small school, public school, private school, in the city, in the country, different language, different degree, different activities. We've all tried different paths, and that's how we went through our university. But yet we still collectively all say, yes, it's still a university experience. They're all different. My youngest daughter, she came to me a few years ago and said, Dad, tell me what to do every single year for the next 4 years. Tell me what to do every day for the next 4 years to pass university. Well, I don't know about you, but I can't give her that book for going to university. By the time I write it, she's going to be long done. And that's not going to be valuable for her. Her journey is going to be different than mine many years ago. But I can teach her values and principles. What are the values and principles? Go to class, talk to your professor, study, do the homework, pay your bills, don't stay out too late, keep away from the drinking, keep away from drugs, get involved in activities. For the most part, you'll have a good time. You'll be able to do well. Yes, she can still get through university, but the more she follows the principles, the easier it becomes to pass university. So that's why I can't give her that book. And if she goes through 4 years of school and she's still waiting for me to tell her what to do every day, I've wasted my money. It's not valuable for her. She has to learn how to think for herself. That's the value of helping her understand values and principles. So she's learning how to make those decisions faster herself. And what I had to do at work is I had to combine many of these ideas, because I mentioned earlier about reading. We only retain about 10% of what we read, maybe 15% of what we read and see. But when we do something, we experience something, we remember 80% of what we do. And it's important. That's how we're going to pull and link that information together. So what I did is I said, I need to come up with a way of having people experience 8 weeks of Agile, but do it in a half day, in 4 hours. Allow them to experiment, to try, and make it visual, make it fun, make it hands-on and experiential learning. So it's bringing a lot of my education from teaching, trying to bring this into my company. So I bring them into a room, anywhere from 12 to, I can do it up to 60 people now. I give them a scenario. We're going to build a beautiful tropical resort on an island somewhere, doesn't matter where. They're going to form their own teams. They're going to run 3 cycles, 3 sprints. The best part, they get to use Lego bricks. That's going to be fun. How often do we play with Lego bricks at work? Not too often. I set them up immediately in the beginning. I tell them, guess what? Hands-on, it's interactive. You're going to have success and failure. You're not going to know everything. Things are going to happen in the room. It's okay. That's part of the learning. We want that to happen. They start with a blank table And by the end, this is the type of thing they produce. So I'm going to ask anyone who would like to take a guess, how much time do you think it took to build this table? Any guesses? Anyone want to type in quickly what guesses? 4 hours, 3 months, a week. You ready for this? Some great answers. That entire table they built in 30 minutes. That's it, 30 minutes. They only touch the Lego bricks 10 minutes at a time, 3 times. So now they're learning, wow, this Agile is so much faster. We even have a joke in our company that if we still do it our traditional way, the table would still be empty because we'd be in planning mode, right? Because we talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and discuss and we never actually build anything. But on the right, they had many requirements they did not need. They realized that because they only built the most important requirements first. So because of that, they're able to produce an island in only 30 minutes. So when I show this to our leaders, I invite our leaders in at the end of these sessions. They're amazed at how much is built in that short amount of time. And some beautiful examples of what they build: rooms, airports, hotels, rock climbing wall, outdoor theater. I've had underwater hotels. It's amazing what people, the creativity. I've ran this 158 times, mostly at our company. I've done it for PMI UK. I've done it for Columbia University for their master's program. And it's no matter the customer, no matter the people who attend, they still see these types of results. So it keeps proving that this technique works in many other areas. So I'm starting to wrap up here, but I just want to show 2 other quick concepts. So I'll share these numbers. They are software numbers, but I just wanted to help put this in perspective. 45% and 80%. 45% of software is never, ever used. Okay, so what? Who cares? 80% is rarely or never used. We really only use about 20%. That's the most important part. But the problem is, you ready for this? This is when I finally realized the value of something like Agile. We are going to gather requirements for, budget for, design, build, test, deploy 80% of something we're rarely going to use before you're allowed to get the 20%. We're going to hold up the 20% until we do all of that for the other 80%. Crazy, isn't it? But when we switch, think of some of those earlier graphs. We're going to focus on the most important things first. What are those 20%? You get the results that you saw on the table. You can produce a lot more value in a very short period of time, and no one is working crazy. They're working regular, normal time. Completely changes the way we think about that work. Another quick concept here. When we start on our more traditional predictive approach, if we have any misunderstandings in the beginning, that can lead to large differences at the end because we typically only show the results at the end. In Agile, we're going to show our customers small incremental changes every 2 weeks. We can adjust, we can react to what our customers say. Yes, we still may not get to the desired results, but we're going to be much closer because we're constantly making corrections. Now, what happens if our customers change their mind? They come up with new ideas, and if we don't pick it up, we're going to be further apart. Where in Agile, because we're constantly having those conversations, we're going to be able to make adjustments as well, and we're going to be able to track closer to what they're asking for. So we're able to converge in a much faster way. So lots of fun, lots of learning in the class. One other quick concept before I start wrapping up. I'll run this with maybe 5 or 6 teams at a time, 8 people each. And I talk about how they all work slightly different. And I said, well, wait a minute. You all heard me say the same thing at the same time, but yet the 5 teams work slightly different. And it's okay. And it all fits in the same overall program. And think back to the university example I gave. Each team is set up of a different set of people. They're all going to work slightly different. They all have different backgrounds, different experiences. They're going to converge to what makes sense to them. What's that fine tuning? What's the way that they want to work? And it's okay. And that's, again, is demonstrated in the class, back to that university example. The worst thing I can do is say there's only one way to do Agile, and I force everyone to do it. It doesn't make sense. I want to define the principles and values and only go down so far, allow them to do all the fine tuning to truly be empowered, make the decisions for themselves. And that's part of what I'm trying to teach in the class. Now, I did not show you some of the Agile concepts. I'll just show them briefly here, see if you recognize them. Individuals and interactions over process and tools. Yes, we still need process and tools, but we want people to talk to each other, to interact. We're focused on the working solution. Yes, we need documentation, but let's make sure it's working. Let's show it to our customers more frequently. Let's collaborate directly with our customers, and let's respond to change. Absolutely, it's built in. And as part of that, we're going to encourage face-to-face discussions. We're going to keep things very simple. Let's not add process to fix a problem. Let's try to reduce process to fix a problem. Let the teams truly be self-organizing. Let's regularly reflect and improve the retrospective. Something we don't do in our normal life, where we step back and say, well, what is it? How can we improve as a team? Not the work, not the requirements, but how do we talk to each other? How can we improve? How do we communicate faster? How do we cut out waste in what we're doing? Very, very powerful. And again, can apply to many, many different places. Excuse me. And as last 2 slides here, what I also love about this concept of this training is every time I bring a new coach in, I make them attend the class. Because even coaches of 10 or 15 years, they still learn something from the class. It's so condensed, they can see a decision they make in 15 minutes in the beginning, how it impacts something 2 hours later. In real life, it might be 3 months later, they don't make the connection. Here, they're seeing all that, how the different pieces connect together. They're observing different teams all working together in different ways. They're recognizing different ways teams function. I teach them the Socratic method. Don't give them the answers. Ask them what they think. Help teach them how to think. Don't always give them the answer. And it's hard. People want to say, yes, do it this way, do it this way. No. What do you think? Do you have an idea? Do you have a suggestion? And I teach the coaches to maybe nudge or hint at solutions, but don't give them the final answer. Plus, they're learning how to recognize body language. Watch as people are getting frustrated or angry or excited. What's the volume of the sound in the room? Does it go up or down? What happens when the volume changes? Learn how to read what's happening in the room. So it's teaching the coaches to also learn how to be better coaches. So I love this. I love this exercise that I do. And really, in conclusion, with Agile, Agile is more about a mindset. It's not really about a new process. And when I talk to project managers that come from more of that predictive environment, they think, oh, I just learned the new terms and that's it. It's all the same. And I go, it's not the same. We're thinking different about the problem space. So it's hard to write it down. It's hard to explain it, but it's teaching people to be more flexible, more engaged. It's okay to have fun. What a concept at work. Oh, I love when I have senior vice presidents tell me it's fun. They enjoy going to some of their sponsor meetings. To me, that's fun for me to hear that they're enjoying this new way of working. Business agility, there's value across the entire enterprise. I work directly with our chief of staff to our CEO. And she said, I need you to travel around the world and go share this with many of our sites around the world. This is important. We have to change the way that we think, change the way that we solve problems. And by letting people experience Agile themselves, they get a better understanding of what is Agile. Because think about this. If I come into manufacturing or commercial or finance or procurement, I'm not an expert there. They're the expert. They've been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years. For me to come in and say, manufacturing, I'm going to give you a 200%, 300% increase, they're going to say I'm crazy. I have no credibility. But instead, if I show them, here's what we do, you tell me, where can we apply this in your organization? You have the knowledge. They come back maybe a day, a week, a month. I've had people come back a year later and say, now I know where I can apply this. I've been thinking about this class for a year. We finally have the right environment. We have the right area, the right team. Please come in and help us implement this new way of working. So very, very different approach to how we roll this out. And with that, I want to just make sure we have some time for questions and comments, and love to hear your thoughts. Good, bad, indifferent. Disagree with me. It's okay. Make them hard. I know we have some questions already, but yeah, let's talk about it. And certainly if you like to LinkedIn, I have the QSR code here as well as the link. Please do send me a link. I've seen many of the links in the chat, but it's probably a little bit easier if you just go ahead and send them to me. And with that, let's go through some of the questions that we currently have.
Sure. So thank you, Mike. I think great webinar, and I think the analogy what you presented was quite interesting. The university, okay, I think that's very valuable in terms of my takeaway, at least, because we have been learning about Agile, I think, more than a couple of years already. Everybody in different angles, different mindset, but the more important is that what you have clubbed the fun element, which is very important, which not many people talk about. That's very important. Then if you don't have a fun, and when you're trying to do something, when you create something, when you try to deliver something, it takes you to the position of performing, and then automatically it started becoming a plateau to get towards storming slowly. And I think that's the real takeaway for me, that what you explained. But we have a lot of questions also coming in. Great session. We have a couple of questions. Let me begin with few to start with. Feel free to give them the answers. We have near about 10 minutes also. So from Mohammed, so I think the very common question, Mike, you would not disagree with me, I know. Okay, I think you have been answering this question on every webinar, I'm guaranteeing you. So the question is there any chance of Agile approach to be implemented in the construction in projects?
So I will start by saying Agile is not the one tool for everything. I don't think there's ever one tool anywhere. And I'll answer in a moment, but when I bring coaches in, I tell them, your job is not to implement Agile, right? That sounds backwards, doesn't it? Because I tell them, don't start with Agile. Understand the problem. What's the flow? What's the challenge? Then if Agile is the right tool, let's see how we can help. For something like construction, I think there's elements of construction absolutely could benefit from Agile, especially around some of the planning, the coordination, maybe some of the design work would be great for Agile. If we're talking about the Burj Khalifa, yeah, once you start building that building, the basement has to be correct before I build the top floor. There's absolutely a sequence there, and more predictive makes more sense. I have a friend of mine who teaches Agile. When he sets up his training classes, he uses a predictive approach. It's repetitive, it's understood. He knows what the steps are. That's the right tool. He does not need to use Agile for something that's more predictive. So will you see 100% Agile in construction? I don't think so. But I think there's many places where there's lots of waste, there's lots of waiting, there's lots of maybe some poor communication that can benefit from some of these techniques.
Great answer there. Another question from Chamil is that what are the main challenges normally organizations face or who are trying to move from stereotype waterfall to agile project management? And basically, since it is attached to the mindset, more importantly, how the employees have to be evolved because they have been accustomed to work with the agile, waterfall. Now you're asking us to change our mindset, which is not a very easy thing for any individual, right? So what are the main challenges faced and how do we change this mindset in the easiest form?
Very simple. I reverse it. So part of this workshop I do is I'm looking for the early adopters. And you may have seen a curve that goes from early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. If I'm going to work with the late majority, they're going to fight me. They don't want to change. They like the way they're doing things. Great. I don't want to start with them. But if I can run this workshop and we find those people that want to do Agile, they're going to make it work. Now the early majority says, oh, I don't want to be first, but I'm happy to be second or third or fourth. Great. They're going to watch the early adopters and they want to go next. And we get a domino effect. The dominoes just start tipping over. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is you don't have to go to Agile in a single move. If I can take a team and say, can we go from 0 to 40% Agile? I'm happy. It's okay. Because now the next time, the next piece of work they do, maybe we go from 40 to 60% Agile. And then now we eventually get them to full Agile. The other piece is the boundary. If this team is working with non-Agile teams, there needs to be a negotiation. Okay, how do we agree to work? We're going Agile, you're staying predictive. We're going to have to define this new boundary. But to me, a hybrid is never a final state. A hybrid is a transition state. So can we work with that new department and say, hey, can you also go Agile? Now there's 2 of us. Maybe we work with a third department. Hey, maybe you should go Agile as well. And we keep growing our sphere of Agile to more and more groups do it. And if we're doing it with other parts of the organization, they start coming together and connecting and learning and finding each other. So it's definitely a long game. I have a presentation on this. You have to think long term. You can't think, oh, I come in, I train, everybody's done, and we're Agile by next week. That's usually where Agile fails. It's getting it embedded into the culture and people see the value, management sees the value, they're going to help make it occur. They're going to make this something that people want to do.
Perfect. One enormous question has come to us, Mr. Mike, over there, is that attached to then what you're saying in sequence is that how to really manage the bosses who are risk averse. Because risk averse managers or leaders definitely don't allow their team members to learn while they're trying to do agile mindset and try to fail fast, because how do you handle them?
Yes, I shouldn't say very easy. It's not easy, but the way that I approach it is, think about this. If I come to you and I say, hey, boss, I want to completely change our process. I want to do something new, and I want to change all of our projects today. What's the normal response? No way. Of course, I'm not going to change. But what if I come to you this way and I say, hey, boss, I think there's a way that we can actually get better and you're going to look better. I like to try an experiment. It's a great word to use, experiment. Can I try an experiment just for this one project? Maybe let's just start with 2 weeks. I want to see how it works. Do we see benefit? What do you think? Do you like what you're seeing? Let's try it again for another 2 weeks. Or can we do it for this project and try a new way of working? At the end, we're going to talk about, you and I together, did we see value and benefit or not? And you get them hooked. And if they see the benefit, can I try it on a second project? Okay, let's try it. Let's see if we can reproduce this. It wasn't a crazy anomaly. We show it again. We do it 2 times. Now we've got their attention. Hey, boss, now can we talk about maybe this makes sense to change our department because we're getting results faster. Your boss is noticing what we're doing. This is great for you in your career because you're helping to lead this change. This is amazing how we're transforming our department. What do you think? It's a whole different approach. Guess what? It's an agile approach to implementing a change.
Wow. That was really a good piece of advice, I would say, Mike, because it is really effective what you have just spoken around. Thanks for that answer. We have a lot of questions coming around Scrum as well Agile in terms of more technical aspects about story estimation, because let me see if I can pick them up together to club it. But I have one good question around from Mr. Benel is there about the quality of the Agile projects, and any quick advice is basically then how to make people and process to adapt Agile, because business and technology can easily adapt it in faster fashion, but of course, the change management in the people and process is a slow dragging thing.
Yeah.
So any thoughts about quality in these two aspects?
Again, I always start with the benefits. If you notice, what was my slide 2 or slide 3? Here are the benefits I've done by doing Agile. So even on this presentation, one of my early slides is, here's what we've done. So if I can do an experiment with one project, I'm going to capture some form of value. And to get the second project, hey, I think we're going to get this value. Can we try it on project number 2? And then I get another 1 or 2 more. And now I've got 4 and 5 and 6 and 10. All of a sudden, I have a talking slide that shows the value and the quality. We've actually done experiments where the quality goes higher. It's better quality with less problems. So I even talked to our head of our quality department, and I said, what is your job? Is your job to be the police and just make sure that we're filling out the documents correctly? Or is your job to help improve the quality of what we're producing? And she said, no, absolutely. It's about the quality. I said, great. I said, here's the results we're getting. How come you're not leading the charge to move to Agile? This is exactly about quality. Why are you not the one who's explaining to us why we should go to Agile? Because we're getting 25 to 50% better quality. Is there value in doing this? And again, constantly putting it back to benefit, putting it to their term, putting it to what do they get out of it? And that's the way. I don't talk in terms of Agile. I don't talk in terms of the mechanics. I don't try to teach Agile. I talk about, here's the benefit. Here's the benefit you're going to get if we start making these changes. And I've proven it because you allowed me to do 1 or 2 experiments, and I've shown that I can produce that value. So again, it's thinking long-term, not the short, quick. How do I convince somebody and make everybody change? Just allow me to try it as an experiment. I'll even come in as a skeptic. I don't know if it works. Let's try it here. What do you think? And it's much easier to have that conversation.
Correct. Mr. Rohit has posted another interesting question, Mr. Mike, is that is it always better to go hybrid from predictive rather than directly shifting to Agile?
Let me answer this one real quick question. There's a difference between Agile and Scrum. Scrum is a type of Agile. So real simple there. Yeah, there's not a whole lot more to that answer. Yeah. I just happened to see that pop up. The hybrid to me is I know PMI talks about it as being a final state. To me, I don't think you can live in a hybrid state long term. Think about our measuring systems. We have the English system and the metric system. If we had to have items in both systems, it becomes very confusing. I have to have double of everything. If I'm transitioning to go from English to metric or metric to English, okay, maybe I have to live with both for a short period of time. But in my experience, either teams go back to where they started or they push through and truly go Agile. So it's only that temporary state that you go through as I'm slowly building the teams and they're getting to 40 and they're getting to 60% and then eventually Agile, or as I'm interacting with other departments, it's part of the transition, part of the hybrid, maybe 1 or 2 years. It could be that long, but the goal is to always get to complete Agile, because trying to do both produces too much overhead, too much waste. And I don't think there's value in staying in that hybrid environment.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Good. Yep, I think that's quite a useful piece of information. Shalini is asking a bit of more of a technical question. More importantly, I don't know whether, but it's worth to ask that, because she spoke about, more importantly, from Scrum perspective, the story estimation techniques. So the question is around estimation of stories. People always think about complexity is not being counted that much as compared to the time, because traditionally, when you say that I want to schedule my project planning, first thing you think about is your people and time, and the budget. So using that iron triangle terminology, she's asking that how you can make story estimation much more than the time consuming or the time taking exercise to estimate anything.
So what's interesting, I had this similar problem. We had a project that was starting up, expected to be a 2-year project, and they said, we need you to estimate. And I said, we can do it in 1 hour total for the entire project. What do you mean? We can't estimate the entire project in 1 hour? I said, absolutely they can. I said, we knew we had very simple shells of about 250 stories. I said, simple, call every one of those stories, give them a 3. Now let's read through them. Is there anyone that feels bigger than the average or smaller than the average? If it's bigger, call it a 5, smaller, call it a 1. Go through it, take 30 minutes, go back, read the list again, make any small adjustments, you're done. So we came up with an estimate of about 750 story points. We did that in 1 hour.
Right.
At the end of the project, about a year later, we had a total of about 785 story points. Pretty darn close. What was also interesting is we didn't spend 2, 3, 4 weeks trying to come up with an estimate that wasn't any better. And what was even more fun, when you start going with Agile, you start going faster. So in the beginning, yes, people want estimates and I try to push back and, oh yeah, we'll get to you. And I do simple calculations like this. But what's interesting is I've had leaders come back to me and they say, you're starting to go so fast, I can't predict when you're going to be done. You're getting faster than I thought you could ever do. I'm going to stop asking you for a date. You tell me when you're ready. That is so much fun to be going faster than your customers want or that your leaders want. And again, I've seen that time and time again. The teams go 200, 300, 400% faster. And the leaders just finally realize, like, maybe we really don't need this estimation or not the way that we thought about it. We have a total number, that 750 I came up with. I've got an average. I can show where we're tracking to that number. It's good enough. Remember back to the concept of good enough. We lie to ourselves. I'm going to use that very strong word. We lie to ourselves when we think we can have a very precise predictive schedule. They're never, right? We always deal with change management and updating the schedule and tracking the new changes, all that overhead, all that waste, all that time. Let's focus on getting the work done. And we're going to eventually establish a rhythm, usually about 2 months. 2 to 3 months, we're going to have a very good rhythm. We can now predict total number of stories left. We're averaging this number per sprint. Quick division. Yeah, we're going to be another 15 sprints, 30 weeks. That's close enough. It's good enough. Yes, it takes time to convince somebody to do that, but back to, again, start with 1 or 2 experiments and show it. Show that you don't need to overly predict this. Start with something that's not critical. Because then they're going to be more risk tolerant. If it's a non-critical application, you're trying something new, you have a better chance of showing it's a waste of time trying to do these detailed estimations. I'd rather take that time and apply it to getting the work done itself. Again,
great piece of advice. Great piece of advice, Mr. Mike. So I think we are almost at 8:08 now.
Sure,
I'm sorry for I'm not able to take more questions because we have to finish by 8:10 somewhere. But yeah, I think guys, people who have not been answered their question, feel free to reach Mr. Mike over the LinkedIn. He has already posted his QR code as well.
Yeah, please do. Connect with me. Happy to talk more about it. We can set up time to chat. And again, I'm a full-time employee. I'm not a consultant, but I do this for fun. I speak for fun, and I just love talking about these topics. So, happy to connect with folks.
Great. Thank you so much for your pleasure there. So I think it's a great piece of information what you've shared with us, Mr. Mike, over there. And then I think thank you so much again for coming on our webinar and sharing your thought and the mindset attitude, what you have been giving the useful nuggets to the audience there. So I think thank you, audience. You have been so great in terms of asking those engaging questions. I really want to give you a big round of applause to all of us who have been asking the questions. It really helps all other people to think more. So really keep on doing that. So with that, I would like to give a big shout out to our friends also in the marketing team who have been doing the great stuff in terms of posting the information like this webinar, events, and to social media pages on the website. And we are going to close the webinar today. And thank you for attendance. And more importantly, I would not say good night before saying to thank you to the rest of the chapter volunteers who are definitely doing the great stuff in terms of making these webinars quite interesting as possible with us and with our colleagues from rest of the departments, from outreach, volunteering, finance,
and for those of you who have not volunteered, go volunteer. It's a lot of fun. Great way to meet people, especially around the world. You're missing out if you're not volunteering. Trust me.
Great. I think totally agree with you that volunteering really adds another dimension of look out of your perspectives at times, and it gives you a lot of free information as well. So I think keep doing volunteering, guys. If you're not doing, start doing it. Okay, until our next webinar, together with my colleague behind the camera, Amir, and the events team, this is Anchal here. Again, wishing you a pleasant evening ahead, and thank you for your participation. Take care and goodbye. Bye-bye. Thanks, Mr. Mike.
Yep, thank you.